Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of this episode is Taking a Sit, 5,000 Years of Taking a Load Off.
This is a great topic. Finally, we're getting to something that it appeals to me. This is pertinent.
Really?
It's something I do all the time. I'm doing it right now.
You are sitting. You are sitting. You know, it seems like something that's very obvious, but what I've found through doing this show is it's the obvious stuff that you have to really look at.
That's right. And listen, it's a big part. Sitting is a big part of my life right now because I just had sciatica flare up. I'd never had it before. And it was horrible. Have you ever had it?
I've had sacroiliitis a couple weeks ago where I could barely move.
God,
and
you always one-up me. You always have to one-up.
It's not
okay, your life is harder, all right? I can't have one goddamn thing.
all right. You know, wait a second. Sacroiliitis? No, I didn't have it. I'm sorry.
Do you have cancer?
I misheard you. I misheard you. Sorry about that. I did have it.
No, but I went to the doc. It was real. It's real. I kind of poo-pooed it when people talked about it because but it was horrid. I couldn't get out of bed. Same thing as you. I couldn't move.
Right.
Could finally get myself to the doctor, and he goes, "Are you sitting a lot?"
Oh yeah.
And I go, "Yeah." I go, "I've been traveling a lot." He goes, "You got a wallet?"
That's last episode. You said that it was your big wallet.
Yeah.
Big one.
I've been sitting on a wallet. It screwed up my whole body.
What do you keep it? A bunch of rubbers? You keep a bunch of rubbers in there?
I keep my gold. I've turned everything into gold, just like we're supposed to.
I hope you're sitting on a bunch of intro to Anthro cards that you're passing out.
Damn straight. Damn straight I am.
That's worth getting sciatica over.
But wallets just get our generation of men, our wallets, I don't know why they're all like 2 inches thick, but they are. But now I'm done. I'm done with wallets.
Really? Oh yeah, you have that little thing. You said
little tiny thing, and my phone, and that's it.
I never carry money in my wallet. I only carry like my cards in there.
And then you just put your cash in your pocket if you carry it. I don't even have cash that often.
I don't have that much.
And if I do, my kids just take it anyway. So what's the point?
All right. So John, today, obviously, we're going to be talking about sitting, which we have to talk about them.
Let's do it.
In the article, How the Chair Conquered the World, Edward Tenner notes that the chair is, quote, one of the first technologies an American or European child encounters. No sooner has a child been weaned that it learns to eat in an elevated model. It is then strapped into a special molded mini chair for automobile transportation, and then goes to school where the chair is one of the most common objects in the classroom.
I just saw some young parents just yesterday. They were putting their kids in, and boy, they looked so broken and tired. They had like a young infant and then like maybe a 2-year-old, 18-month-old. And they were both, they don't even talk to each other. It just reminded me and Jennifer when we had kids. You don't even talk. Yeah, I'll get it. I'll get the grocery here. You got the thing. I don't know. Did we pay the bill? Yeah, I'll see you back at the house. They were like just talking like that, just information only. But the chairs, whoa, they have gotten really, really high tech. Much better than the chairs I had. Yeah. We had the pop and go, I think it was called, where it would snap into a thing that was already in the car. And then you snap the thing into it. But these guys, it was like, man, it was like the Jetsons. It was crazy.
Tenner then says that in the West, we may picnic on the grass and spread blankets on the beach. But in artificial settings, there is something disconcerting about the absence of chairs. And I have to agree with that. Like if you go in a place and there's no chairs.
Yeah. I don't know how to sit anymore on the ground.
Really?
I can't get down there. I can't get up. It's not like, I don't know. It's not a thing. It's not something I do.
So what do you avoid even being in that situation? Like, no, I can't go on the picnic. I got something going on.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think the last time. I haven't been on a picnic and I don't even know. I
Yeah.
can't think of them. When was the last time you went on a picnic?
Just going out for a picnic. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Do you have a
Years.
basket? Do you and Mary have a
No,
basket with plates in there and stuff?
it seems like something we would have. Like I would like to have that, like plastic wine glasses or something. But no, we don't. We don't. Um, but
Our picnic, our version of picnic is In-N-Out Burger. That's our.
really, yeah, just
You
staying
don't
in the
have any.
car.
You don't have In-N-Out out there, do you?
They keep saying they're coming. They may have them down in Las Cruces, but they don't have them in Albuquerque yet. We were just talking about that recently because we saw a gift card for them at the grocery store here, and Mary was asking, "Do they even have In-N-Out Burger here?" And I don't think they do.
God damn.
But the reason this episode came up to me, it was when we were doing our episode on culture, which has been a long time ago, and it's been in the back of my mind ever since. Because I came across a line when I was reading about culture. It was in a book, and it mentioned that back in the 1950s, anthropologist Gordon Hughes had done some research and found out that there are over 100 different ways to sit. So, and that line stuck with me. Of like, I'd never even thought of more than maybe a handful of ways of sitting, but to think of 100. I usually like, how hard can it be? You just kind of lean back, let gravity take over, and let your ass dry for a while.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
That's it.
so,
That's incredible.
So I was like, after that's been in my mind for like a year and a half now, and I was like, we have to do an episode on sitting.
Fantastic.
So my question for you then, you say like you've been doing a lot of sitting for like traveling.
Yes, a lot of airplane seating.
When you work on your computer, do you sit at a desk or do you sit on
I
the
sit
bed?
on the worst position possible. In a couch with my legs up on the coffee table and the laptop in my lap. Where it belongs, God damn it.
Straight out, legs straight out.
Straight out. Until the lack of blood causes shooting spasms.
Do you have
my neck, like crooked like Ichabod Crane in a horrible with my Adam's apple jutting forward.
You should you'll have to post some photos of it.
Yeah, okay. I'll do it.
Do you have a favorite chair at home? Do you sit in your favorite chair?
I have taken over one of the rooms in the house. It's I don't know, we call it the den. I don't know what anyway. But I've taken over. That's my place. Don't come in there.
And what's the chair that you have in there?
It's a couch.
Just a couch.
A blue couch that has started to sag from where I've been sitting in it. I think Jennifer never said once she sits in it, she's going to want a new one. And the dog sits right next to me.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's perfect. Nice. I love it.
If you had to pick a posture of your favorite human posture for like sitting in a chair, lying down, standing up, squatting, is it sitting on the couch? Do you think?
I like lying down. I mean, I would choose being in bed as my favorite. Is that what you mean? Is that straight flat across? Well, I start on my side and then I end up on my stomach.
Yeah. But you like being laid out. Out.
Don't you sleep on your back? Do I remember that? Like, do you?
I flop around a lot.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking you slept like a corpse, but maybe I've got that confused.
No, my mind is racing. I can barely keep
that makes sense.
Shut.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a lot going on up there.
I mean, I'm trying to think the last time we slept together in the same room.
I think it was at the Super Bowl in Miami back in 2010. We went there.
That was so fun.
Yeah. People, if you want to find out, you should listen to our football episode.
Yep, great episode. It won the Webby.
It did win the Webby.
Yeah.
By the way, I saw there was a show on TV on Discovery Plus or something several years ago. It was about a guy with an autoimmune disease.
Oh boy.
and his body was gradually becoming more and more rigid. And
Oh
at a
wow.
certain point in his life, he had to choose whether he would spend the rest of his life standing up
Oh my
or
God.
sitting down.
Oh my God.
And I don't know. I think most of us, until you reach that point where
Jesus.
you have trouble standing up or you have a medical condition, you probably don't think about sitting. You kind of just think that it's always a combination of sitting and standing.
I think I would take standing because then you could tip me over into bed.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
right.
Yeah,
And
I would stay with that. The sitting sounds like a one trick pony. Whereas the standing, you could put me on the floor, you could put me on a right angle board,
yeah,
or I mean, a 45-degree angle board where I'm kind of propped up for. Oh my God,
right.
Jesus!
But that was the whole story was taking place as he was, and I wish I tried to find it. I can't find it anymore. It was some
Mm-hmm.
medical show.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been probably about 2008 or something.
Mm.
But yeah, at a
Use.
certain point he had to choose, and he chose standing up. He chose standing
I'll see
up.
if I can find it.
Okay. And by the way, there's a really good book, speaking of that, called Sitting Pretty: The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Tausig,
Hmm.
which talks about her life. I'm holding it up now for the
Yeah,
people watching us on
it's a nice
Facebook.
cover.
Yeah, it's a great book. She talks about her life with a disability and being in a wheelchair. And I think she's actually from Johnson County, from Kansas
Well,
City, where
let's
we're
get her
from.
on the
I
show.
know. That's what I
God
was
damn
thinking.
it.
I mean,
Okay.
she talks about. I mean, some of her references sound like places we
We've
know
been,
that we grew
but
up around.
she's probably a lot younger than us.
Yeah, yeah, I think that goes without saying. But the book was recommended to me by a friend with a disability, and I really learned a lot about it. One thing I was struck by was how exhausting it is to be in a wheelchair,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
not talking about physically exhausting, but also emotionally and socially exhausting.
yeah.
Because you're not only dealing with your own disability, you're dealing with everybody else in the world and them dealing with your disability.
Right, right,
so, so,
right.
and Tausig, it's a great book, but she says, quote, disabled people are either cast as helpless victims who need a hero's help to survive, or the inspirational figures who inspire non-disabled characters to be grateful for their beautiful, able-bodied lives. The reality, of course, is so much more complicated.
Yeah,
And ain't that the truth
yeah,
with everything?
yeah.
So,
It's like having a lot of famous people complaining because everybody they interface with sees them, knows them, or sees them,
yeah,
catalogs them, and they don't have any way to catalog the
right,
response.
right, right.
And same with, I would think it's similar in that everybody sees, oh, she's in a wheelchair, she's
Yeah,
disabled, but she's looking out to everybody else going, they're all individual. I
right,
don't know. I
right.
don't have any information about these people. That must be exhausting. Just
Yeah, that's it.
exhausting.
When I read the book, I was just like, Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
that sounds like a lot of work. Just
Mm-hmm.
having to deal with everybody else like interacting with you. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I mean that in like someone who's like, I just want to, I don't want to deal with people. I don't want to deal with people. You know what I mean? But anyway, we will try at some point, try to get her on the show. And
Let's do it. I'll reach out if you give
okay.
me any info you have on her in the
Because I
book.
think she's from our hometown, from where we grew up.
Oh,
And
right on.
so in the meantime, again, it's called Sitting Pretty: The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Tausig. And we give it 2 human opposable thumbs up.
Yeah,
There
we
we
do.
go. 2
Yeah,
of
we
them.
do. 2 of them.
But getting back to sitting for us, John, one of the memories I have of your dad,
Oh,
Raymond
Ray.
Lehr,
Raymond Vincent Lear.
Raymond Vincent Lehr, is I remember coming to your house when we were younger, and your dad would always be in the living room laying on the floor watching TV.
That's what I was thinking when you were talking about the floor. I was thinking of my dad. He loved it.
I know.
He would lay by the fireplace on the
Yeah.
floor with pillows, with a beer or occasionally a cigar,
Yeah.
watching, and that's how he watched TV, mostly football.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
But he was never in a chair. But
No.
you walked by the entranceway to your living room at that time,
Yeah.
and you'd look over, and there was Mr. Lear just stretched out on the floor watching
I
TV.
wonder, he had a brain, what do you call it?
Cyst or tumor? Or was
no, abscess.
Yeah.
That was removed from his brain when he was
Right.
in his 20s, and he became half of his side became paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why his smile was so
Right.
crooked,
Right.
and one eye looked a little. Anyway, so I wonder if that has anything to do with it, like that sitting too long maybe was uncomfortable in some
Right.
way or something. I
Right.
never thought about that until now.
Do you? Yeah, that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah,
Remembering him.
you're absolutely right, and I would do that. I'd sit next to him, lay down next to him.
Do you sit on the floor now at all? I mean, use it
No,
anytime.
no,
Anytime at all?
I'm over that. I've moved on.
Okay.
I have not passed that Lear trait on to my children. It's been stopped.
That's what my next question was. I was wondering if it was genetic, if that was
Yeah.
something that you guys.
My kids don't watch television. They're like, what? Why would I watch that? They have no interest.
Okay, so as I mentioned in the article World Distribution of Postural Habits that appeared in the April 1955 edition of American Anthropologist, anthropologist Gordon Hughes said that, quote, human postural habits have anatomical and physiological limitations, but there are a great many choices, the determinants for which appear to be mostly cultural. Okay.
What?
So,
What's his name?
Gordon Hughes.
Gordon.
And we've talked about culture.
Yeah,
we did
we
a
sure
whole
have.
episode on culture. And the definition that we used was the definition that my archaeology professor, Dr. Warren Lale, used, which is culture is a learned, shared, symbolic, fluid composite of all that a society knows, values, believes, or creates that is passed down from generation to generation. And as a reminder, since it's been a while since we did that episode, there are some important things to keep in mind about culture. And first, culture is learned. Okay, we're not born with culture. If we're not born with it, then it's got to be culture. So it's something that is taught to us after we come into the world.
It's nature versus nurture.
Yeah,
Mr. McCray, professor.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And it may not be consciously taught to you. It may be consciously or unconsciously taught to you just by being around people. But they're sharing their culture with you. In fact, right now we are probably sharing culture with each other. Based
you
on
and me?
Yeah.
All right.
Just by sitting here.
Yeah.
We're not laying on the floor. We're not laying on the floor.
I see. Yeah.
Secondly, culture is shared. So again, there has to be a group of people who are sharing that culture. If you have your own culture, if you're one person doing it, it's not culture.
No, that's mental illness.
Right. And third, culture is symbolic. And a symbol is something that stands for something else. So there's no inherent value in the action or in the sign, whatever it is that we use, the object, whatever it is we create, but it has symbolic meaning for us in our culture. So then how does that apply to sitting? Well, it means that, yes, the human body is capable of unlimited different ways of sitting and standing or squatting. Right. But ultimately, the ways we sit and what we sit on and where we sit are taught to us and passed down to us from the people who are our parents, usually.
Absolutely. And we, as you know, Jennifer and I are very progressive parents, very progressive.
Right.
And so we never had high chairs. We had a little table. Did you ever see it? That wooden table that sat in our kitchen?
No.
There was a little table about, 3 feet.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an oval. And little stools, little wooden stools, and they would sit on them. God, that was so goddamn cute.
Oh, really?
They would sit on those stools, and so they could choose whether to get up or get out, so they weren't being, forced
to sit there.
Yeah.
How did that work out?
Great. I thought I was sitting there going, "This is going to be a nightmare." And it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, though. Then they never sat. That began a long journey of absolutely a free-for-all in terms of like manners and all that stuff.
Us taking a walk with Hudson over to your son over to Griffith Park one time, and I think you stopped to get him a hot dog. I just remember him like crawling around on top of the table.
With no shoes. He never wore shoes.
No shoes. He never wore shoes.
He was filthy. People used to scream at me in L.A. Your son doesn't have shoes on. I'm just like...
Just how about now? Is he still like to be barefoot? Or
no, he loves shoes. He's got a whole closet full.
Oh, nice. Good for him. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about is, say, for example, there's nothing physiologically to stop you, like if you were going for a job interview and you go in to meet a potential employer.
Right.
Physiologically, you could just come in and just flop down on the floor if you wanted. Just stick your legs out.
Or as you say, squat. Every time you say squat, I think of pooping. You're right. You're right. But the culture says that's lack of respect and that you don't have interest in the job.
Right. You're right. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to come in and stand there next to that chair in front of the potential employer's desk.
Yes.
And wait for them to motion to it and have you sit down.
Oh, really? Is that what you're supposed to do? I always just come in and sit down. I'm supposed to stand and wait?
No, I guess it's all right to sit down.
Oh, my God. No wonder. Why didn't you we should have done this episode a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Why don't you start like nailing a bunch of gigs after this, a bunch of jobs. I was pitching a show one time with a guy at Fox Television. And he came in and he thought it would be really funny to go sit at the executive's chair while we were all and like pretend like he was making calls on the executive's phone call. On the executive's phone.
How did it go over?
Not very well.
No. Nobody wants their personal space.
Yeah.
That's like when somebody says, "Can I borrow your laptop?" And you're just like,
Yeah.
Or your phone. Your phone. I don't want anybody holding my phone but me.
He thought it would be really wacky, I think, kind of like like Harpo Marx or something. It was
it's always like if you're looking for wacky, icebreaker things in a pitch, your pitch is probably not, you know what I mean? It's like
yeah, it was me and the agent were both like, as soon as he sat down, we're like, oh my God.
He didn't even tell you he was going to do it?
No, he just did it. We were like,
oh my God.
Both of us looked at him like, get out of there. It was like very uncomfortable. But,
oh my God.
Anyway, but continuing with Hughes, he says that the number of different body attitudes and postures we can maintain when you take into account all the different subtle nuances is probably in an order of 1,000. Wow. Like 1,000 different ways.
I would think even more, but
really?
I guess maybe I'm misunderstanding exactly what he's talking about. I mean, how many Kama Sutra positions are there?
I don't know. I haven't got that.
I mean, if you can give yourself oral sex, that's one. That's not everybody.
Yeah, Hughes. You didn't mention that one.
Yeah.
You mentioned that one.
1,001, it turns out.
And he says, this is what he said, the development of the upright stance of the bipedal locomotion took place well before the simian brain case and face had modified into essentially human features, which suggests that standing, sitting, squatting, and recumbent postures preceded the emergence of fully human behavior.
Okay, there's a bit of a leap there, isn't there?
Well, it just seems, basically it's saying like before we became human, obviously we were sitting.
Okay.
Before we created fire, we were sitting. Before we created language, we were sitting.
Okay, I gotcha.
So sitting and standing up are some of our oldest human behaviors.
Yes, agreed. And
he says that some of these certain postures may occur in all cultures without exception and may form a part of our basic hominid heritage. And two of the postures he gives for that are like just standing there with your arms at your side.
Akimbo, as we like to say. Akimbo.
And also
it feels so good when I do that.
With your hands kind of clasped at your middle. at your waist.
I don't do that very much. It's like the priest, right? That's like the
Just kind
classic,
of like,
like,
just standing there with your hands clasped.
Mhm.
And so what he's saying is that those, because they're so old, they're old human behaviors. Most likely that as it's something that we're still doing now that our hominin ancestors were doing probably 2.53 million years ago.
Right.
Somewhere you
But
standing there at Costco, they were standing exactly the same way out on the savannah.
That's interesting because like there had to be one of us who realized you could put your fingers interlocked. And, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like how
That's
long
so
did that
weird. Do you think that's how it goes? One did it, and then it's kind of like another guy's. I mean, at some point, right?
Yeah, or maybe like different places or something. But we take it for granted now. But just imagine that was something that they were doing.
Whoa, yeah. What's he doing?
Bipedal primate.
Oh my God! What's wrong with his hands?
They're locked together. They're stuck together.
What about the first one who did? Here's the church. Here's the steeple. Open up, and here's all the people. Does that? Or lift my thumb, put your finger in, spin it around, close my thumb. Thanks for cleaning my toilet.
Yeah. That was, I forgot about that one. We'll have to post some videos of that one. Maybe.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was probably high tech for like hundreds of thousands of years. Here's the church, here's the steeple.
Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's have a thumb war. The thumb wars, you know what I mean? To interlock and do that.
Yeah, that was that was like human advancement at that point. Like,
yeah. Somebody's like, what? A game with just our hand? This is fantastic. Yeah. Can you imagine? It'd be like getting a PlayStation 4. Just be like,
it was like chess.
God.
It was like chess for a million years. It was like
they
chess
played it for like the first time they played it for like 6 weeks straight. Didn't even eat. It was just so good. Thumb war. But then people started to cheat, with the reach over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? That is bullshit, that reach over move.
Hughes then makes the point that a fourth of mankind habitually squats in this fashion very similar to the squatting position of the chimpanzee, and the rest of us might squat this way too if we were not trained to use other postures.
Okay. I buy that. I do not squat. Even when I poop, I'm sitting up, I think, you know, but I don't, do you ever hang out in your house just squatting or in the backyard squatting, looking around?
Not really. I was trying to think, and again, it must be cultural because squatting is like our go-to, like as a hominin, probably squatting is more natural for us. But even like you mentioned, even pooping, we figured out a way in the West to sit up.
Right.
Sit up while we're doing it.
Now we have to buy foot pedals to get us back into squatting position.
The squatty potty.
Yeah. We build that's classic human, man.
Yeah.
Tech. We build tech and it ends up biting us in the ass.
We start out squatting. We build a chair to sit on.
Yeah. And then we have to augment the chair into a squat chair so we could squat again. God, isn't that perfect? That's a perfect description of us.
And Hughes, he then describes some of the cultural factors that may influence how people sit. Okay.
Okay.
So he says culturally, certain sitting postures are common among females.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I hate to say it, but this is the one that you're describing, which is keeping your legs together and maybe tucked to the side or stuck straight out.
Yes. You mean like like putting your knees together and to the side a little bit?
Yeah. Like
yes. I put my feet on the coffee table though. See what I'm saying? I'm like
straight out.
Straight out on, and then my heels are on the coffee table. And then my laptop is on my lap where it belongs.
No wonder you have sciatic. That sounds so...
I can't believe I don't have penis cancer because the thing is on my lap. Maybe I do. What do I know?
Yeah. We'll find out later. We'll find out during the autopsy.
Oh, he did it. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you right now, it'd be like your doctor. It'd be like, did he sit a lot with his computer on his lap? Like, yeah, I did. And Hughes says that probably that were for like female postures of sitting with your legs straight out or tucked under, is the cultural custom to prevent genital exposure. So a lot of these sitting techniques are because of trying to prevent genital exposure. And usually we don't think about it. I wear a kilt, as you know,
Yes.
quite often. And when you wear it, and you've worn a kilt as well.
Yes. We went to a Raiders game at Kansas City Chiefs Arrowhead Stadium. And God, it was cold. It was so cold. Yeah. And you
Freezing
and I are
cold.
sober, so we couldn't drink whiskey like everybody else.
Yeah. Everybody else drinking whiskey were really
they were fun,
rosy cheeked, having fun.
Not you and me. We were in agony.
But when you wear a kilt, you're kind of aware of that again, of how you're sitting, of to prevent genital exposure.
Right. Especially when your scrotum's as long as mine. Like, you want to really keep an eye on it.
But Mary, when I was talking to her about it, she mentioned a famous story where Gene Simmons from Kiss and Cher were dating back in the 70s.
Oh, I forgot about them.
She wanted to go out. Cher wanted to go out, like jogging on the beach in Malibu or something. And Gene Simmons said, he's from New York. He'd never been jogging or whatever. So he just threw on some shorts and they went running. And then when they stopped, I guess Cher turned to him and was like, "Your balls are showing." It's a famous story.
See, when I hear a story like that, I think, has my balls ever been showing and I didn't know? It's like when you notice you haven't zipped up your zipper. I'm like, how many people have seen my ball? Has it ever gone awry? Yeah. I don't know.
What's the etiquette for that? What's the
run
etiquette?
Away? Run away.
Do you mention something to somebody, or do you?
Listen, if my balls are out and you don't tell me, our friendship's over. That's it. That's it.
I had my ex-wife. I'm not sure if I ever mentioned this here. We went to a wedding one time, and it was really, we were all dancing, and she was wearing like a chiffon dress, and then she had a shell underneath. And we were all dancing and jumping up and down. It was dark, and then we came out into the lobby, and we're just walking around talking to people and stuff. And her shell had fallen down, so she was basically topless, and we were just walking around the lobby. Finally, somebody said to us, like, "Your
That's so great.
Yeah, but we had walked around. We had walked around, talked to people, everything.
But Shirley probably was fine with that. I would imagine she was so funny.
It was very funny. We
great.
We thought it was hilarious. But Hughes also notes clothing and footwear, such as heavy boots and tight-fitting skirts, affect how we sit.
Right. I wear heavy boots and tight-fitting skirts, and it certainly fits. Yeah. That
shorts or flip-flops or something like that.
I wear flip-flops. Yeah, I do that too. I love flip-flops.
Imagine if you were in a culture that wore like loose-fitting clothing compared to tight-fitting clothing.
Yes.
How the difference in sitting.
Yeah. Well, you look at the Japanese sit down and loose-fitting clothing. And
right. Right.
But I don't think I have the back muscles to sit. Have you ever sat? When was the last time you sat down on the floor like crisscross applesauce? You know what I mean?
I was going to talk about it later, but yeah, you use a different part of your body when you're sitting cross-legged on the floor.
Yeah.
Than when you do when you're sitting in a chair. It's a whole different.
Absolutely, it's exhausting. I can't do it for that long.
And that's what, whenever you go to, like, when you go, somebody invites you out to like a I don't know, like a Pakistani restaurant or something, or a Japanese restaurant where you have to sit on the floor.
Yeah.
And you're always like,
after a while, you're like, oh my God, can I? It's like.
Or to try to get up afterwards. You know what I mean? You see all that like Anglos just trying to like crawl up you.
Yeah. The blood's come out of your legs and your back is spasming. It's
just crawling.
It's horrible. I can't do
it. Hughes says that artificial supports, for example, logs or rocks, but usually for us, we're talking about furniture, like how we said that's a cultural thing, what we sit on. He mentions 11 common ways of sitting on chairs. And he also mentions that how you
11?
Sit has 11 different ways to sit on a chair.
So I the first one that comes to mind is, you turn the chair around. and your legs go on
right.
either side of the back. There's that one. I don't use that very
That's
much.
10 more?
Yeah,
You got 10 more in you?
I don't think so. Does leaning back on two legs count? Because I do that a lot.
Apparently that's something that Americans love to do. And I was reading about like chair designers. They really, when they made chairs for Americans, they'd have to put extra strong joints on the back legs.
Because we're such assholes. We like lean back.
Yeah. A lot goes into designing a chair, but that was one of them. Like you had to have strong joints in the back. Some of the other things, he says that, if you're a culture that sits on chairs, for example,
okay,
then obviously you have to also have tables because you're sitting off the floor.
Right.
And since culture is a system, once you change one element, everything else changes. So then you have to have, if you sit on chairs, and you have to have dining tables, coffee tables, end tables.
Mm-hmm.
If you sleep in beds, you have to have nightstands.
Right.
And then at that point, you have to, if you're a culture that sits on chairs, then you have to like raise your TV off the ground,
right?
So that it's at your same eye level.
Oh my God!
And I remember being in Cambodia, for example, and seeing people's houses, and you'd see like the TV on the floor.
Right.
And it looks so strange, but it was because it's like, well, nobody was sitting on a chair at that
right.
point. Why would you have the TV up high,
right,
if you were sitting on the floor, And then chairs and stools go back about 5,000 years to ancient Egypt and the Sumerians.
Sumerians, it's always the Sumerians who've done it first.
Right.
Right there in the crescent, the fertile crescent.
And you see what happened once you had a chair. Everything civilization just takes off at that point. Hughes also notes that environment and terrain we live in also affects how we sit or where we sit.
Yeah, if it's a hilly piece of terrain, you're going to fall over a lot on your chair.
Right. But moist and muddy ground, for example, in Europe, Northern Europe, probably led people to, develop stools and chairs.
Something to get you off the ground, right?
Right.
It's like you ever see like a woman with high heels in a muddy backyard? It's rough. Rough.
I was reading like the first stools usually had 3 legs on them because of the ground was so uneven, or the stones were so uneven. So the earliest stools in Europe had 3 legs instead of 2. It was easier for them to stand that way.
Triangle, very powerful shape.
Also, if you had a nomadic lifestyle, most likely you wouldn't develop.
No,
that would affect how you sat too.
We're not putting that table in the caravan. No.
You don't see shepherds carrying around a couch, I guess is what I would say.
But the Ottomans did. They had them.
Also, religious beliefs of our culture will also affect how we sit and where we sit. For example, like Catholic Mass, you kneel at certain points and then you sit.
But you guys put pads on those.
Some don't. The old school, you don't have the pads on there.
That's ridiculous.
You got to suffer for it. You got to suffer.
Well, that typical.
Some religions that you stand to pray with your arms outstretched and look up.
Yeah.
Some people again clasp their hands, like we were talking about, and lower their head. And then in religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, people will sit with their legs crossed in the lotus position, which you were talking about.
I wish I could do it. Those days are behind me.
You don't think? Can you do it now? Can you pull them up into your chair right now?
I could do it. Yeah. Let me see.
Let's see.
I can do
boy.
it. Here's one. And
all right.
Here's 2. Yeah, I'm in. I'm good. I'm going to leave them.
Let's see how long you can last with that. See if you can last for the rest of the show that way.
I have to hold. The problem is I can't get to the mic. I have to undo it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't get to the mic.
So Edward Tenner, he quotes Zen scholar D.T. Suzuki, who said that to raise oneself from the ground, even by 1 foot, means a detachment, a separation, a going away in the realm of analysis and discrimination.
Is that
So
Suzuki from the motorcycle? I mean, is there any
I don't know. I think maybe he's related. Maybe he's related to
somebody who
something.
says that and then his great grandchild invents a motorcycle?
But that's why, again, like sitting on the floor, I love the idea of like that connection
Yeah.
of being on the floor or on the ground rather than up in a chair at
Yeah,
that point.
I love nature, and if I'm camping, I like laying down with my back against a tree.
Ooh,
I
nice.
like that position a
Yeah.
lot. That's good. Until
I
the
used
ants start biting you.
I used to always love when I was in college as an undergrad, in between classes, going out onto the quad or whatever, and just taking a full on sleep.
See, I wish I could do that. I can't do that.
Really, really.
Yeah, I don't know why. I'm afraid somebody's going to come up and do something to me or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, you got to get over that. But it'd
Yeah.
be like I would be out for like hours out there. Like,
But you were drinking heavily during those years. You passed out is what happened.
probably that's probably why I loved it so much.
It's not a nap when you wake up with dried vomit on your face.
A little siesta, my little siesta. But it would be those ones, where you wake up and
Your
you don't know where
pants
you're at.
around your head.
You don't know where you're at.
Right. Oh,
And so I'd like wake up and just be like, what? And, like out in the middle, and people would be going to class and everything. And I was like, who knows what, like I was sprawled out there. You know what
That's
I mean?
because you've taken 500 milligrams of Percocet.
I've been asleep for weeks. In some Asian cultures, when you sit down or kneel in a temple in front of the statue of the Buddha, it's considered offensive to sit with the soles of your feet pointing towards the statue.
I get that. I remember pitching to an executive at HBO, and I think it was HBO, and he put his feet up on the table between us. So I'm seeing the bottom of his tennis shoes while I was pitching.
Oh, yeah, it's disrespectful.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was something like in Southeast Asia, you had to be, you wanted, when you went into a temple, to be aware of what the culturally, how you were supposed to sit or kneel. So that
you got to be an idiot not to be cool and careful when you're in a temple. That's a good way of getting your ass kicked.
Also, sitting can be an indication of power and prestige. Where you sit and what you're sitting on can indicate how important you are.
You head of the table?
Head of the table, king on a throne, or queen on the throne.
Yes.
Which is basically just a large chair.
Mm-hmm.
The executive chair, for example.
Yes.
The man of the house usually has a recliner or a big chair that no one else is supposed to sit in.
Yeah. What about the woman of the house? Does she get a chair?
She can get a chair as well. Well, I don't know.
Does? But Edith and Archie Bunker, she had her own chair, and Archie had his chair.
But his chair he didn't have a recliner. He actually had a wing chair, which was like a historical, like a worn wing chair.
Yes, that's right.
It was a little bit bigger.
They're both in the Smithsonian, I think. I don't know how I knew that, but they are.
And it was, the thing is, her chair was a little bit smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And his was bigger, but his was definitely the chair of power in that house, in that living room. Meathead could never go and sit on that chair.
No. But his daughter could. She could do whatever she wanted.
And also, where you sit, for example, at a seating arrangement, is also says something about your significance.
Oh, I hate those situations. Don't you? When it's a big group and you're trying to figure out who to sit down. If there's a banquet, right? If there's a booth on one side of a big table, or there's chairs around the other, what do you choose? The banquet or the chairs?
I'm usually the first one at the table because I don't like milling around. So it's like if you're the first one, you have to go in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got a banquet and you go right in the middle, and then you're stuck there. Don't do that. I take a chair on the end, so I only have to talk to two people across from me and next to me.
Oh, that's very nice.
It's a good move. It's a good move.
What if people who have had weddings know, like all of the machinations, all of the like planning that goes into coming up with the seating arrangement?
Oh, Well,
of
I
like
remember
who's
that.
sitting with
Oh,
who and
doesn't that,
they're going
oh
to
my
be like,
God. No, they don't like it. They slept together and then,
yeah,
and then when you get them all together, then you forget that the tables are close together. So
yeah,
table 9, the person at table 9 at the back is next to the person at table 33 in the front, and they
yeah.
hate each other. You know what I mean? Then you've got that. It's like, God, it's like 3D
uh,
chess.
my ex-wife and I, again, we went to another wedding in Chicago. Not the same wedding that
Jesus, you guys went to a lot of weddings.
we were invited a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to sit at our table, it was a big tin top. We had been pushed out. Like relatives from like what the bride had like already assembled. They had taken all, even though that was our place we were supposed to sit.
What?
Yeah,
Were they
and they were just like
hillbillies? Like, what the hell?
they were from Ireland. They were from Ireland.
They didn't have
Uh,
name tags? They didn't know any of that?
They did, but they were just like, we came all the way from Ireland. We're all going to sit together, so go find your own table. So
Wow.
my ex-wife and I,
Wow.
we went to another table, and we saw like an open table with just this couple, this older couple sitting there. It was just a tin top and just the four of us sitting.
Right. Okay.
And we were just asking, just making conversation. How do you know the bride and the groom? They were the groom's parents. They had been pushed out. They had been pushed out of their table. Yeah.
Well, the groom side usually gets screwed.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But anyway, they were much more upset than we were. If
I
you can
bet
imagine,
they were.
Just the
Oh
four
my
of
God.
us just sitting on this tin top,
Jesus.
just looking at each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy.
I bet they were thrilled they'd paid for that rehearsal dinner the night before.
I know. Apparently, at Hearst Castle, William Randolph Hearst, this media mogul,
Right.
used to invite famous people up to Hearst Castle, and they would sit at a long table, like a big banquet table.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how interesting he found you, you would be sat closer to Hearst at the end of the table.
Oh my God.
And after you'd been there for a while, you would slowly start working your way down to the end of it. And then when you got down at the far end,
you were done.
That was supposed to, it's time for you to pack your bags and head home at this point.
What a jerk. God, what an ass.
And also social importance from like who you sit with. Like remember in high school when you sat like the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Like who sat with who, or maybe
we were. That's where we sat. We sat together. You, me, Frank, Jeff, and Laura.
Yeah.
And occasionally some of the other satellite friends. Floriani would be there every now and then. And
yeah. But that's who where you sit, I guess, kind of is an indication of your social status as well.
What would you call our clique? Like, we weren't freakers. We certainly weren't jocks. Although Frank was, I guess.
I don't know.
I mean, we weren't good students. All of us. Some of us were good. What the hell? What put us all together? We were just.
We were just kind of. What is it in Spinal Tap? Like I'm like lukewarm water or something like that. We could just kind of
flow through.
Fit in with all the different groups. But we were never really like.
We never belonged. We never belonged. But we were never completely ostracized.
Yeah. So Hughes looked at 100 different ways of sitting in his article. Mm-hmm. And he singled out a few that he felt were more culturally important than others.
This just kills me. The guy writing this book. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's fascinating, but I mean, just the research kills me.
Right. And this is this article is the ground zero of sitting studies.
This is the Bible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Hughes said, first of all, there's the deep squat.
Ooh.
And this is squatting with the soles of the feet flat and the buttocks either actually resting on the ground or floor or only an inch or two above it.
I have not been in that position since I was 3.
Interestingly, he said, and this was written back in the 50s, so I don't know, this has probably changed, but he said a very wide distribution, except for European and European-derived cultures, use the deep squat. Mm-hmm. However, he said the only place he found the deep squatting posture common in contemporary America in the 1950s was among males in the Southern Appalachians and the Ozarks.
Okay. Well, those are our people. Those are our people.
They were using the deep squat. So
Yeah,
it
because they didn't have anything. They were too poor to even have rocks to sit on.
You had to squat. That was the only thing.
That was it.
Pull up your heels. Have a seat, So, and he said, and you've mentioned this already, is the deep squatting posture is, of course, a near universal defecation posture.
Right. That's what it's for.
And he says women seldom use it, again, because of so as not to expose genitals.
Okay.
What they think.
Yeah.
The other one he noticed was, we mentioned before, is sitting with the legs stretched out, like sitting on the floor with your legs stretched straight out.
So you're like in an L position, are you saying?
Yeah, on kind of like what you're doing, only on the floor.
Yeah.
You're on the ground.
I'm trying to think if I've ever been in that position. In the middle of a room, my back is up and my legs are straight out. I don't. How would I?
You put your arms back as support.
Okay. So like if I'm in I feel like I've been like like you'd see students at a Buckminster Fuller lecture. You know, there's no room.
Or like the cool prof is taking them out, to have class outside, and they're sitting there with their arms back.
Okay.
And that one, he says, is usually a very feminine posture, and it's, for example, in Melanesia, which is an area of the southwestern Pacific Ocean. That's a very common female posture, where men tend to sit in deep squats or with their legs partly flexed.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what the physiology is, because women, I think, have better posture overall.
Yeah. Just saying, I don't know. That might be cultural as well.
Yeah, it's got to be, right?
Yeah. I read one article where it seems like culturally, back in the 1800s, there was a real movement for to have people. Your posture was supposed to be a symbol of your moral standing, I guess it would be. In other words, whenever they would talk about criminals or reprobates, they would always have bad, hunched over, for example.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah. So the movement back at that time in the late 1700s, early 1800s, was to have people, you wanted to show people how morally upstanding you were by your posture, and that included sitting. But the thing is, all of the chairs were very upright. So everything was kind of formed to make you sit upright.
Yes.
Form your posture into this kind of culturally acceptable, upstanding, straight posture. So, and for women, you had corsets, you had the really tight dresses, everything would make you sit up straight.
Men had those tight neck things and ties and cummerbunds and...
So I guess it was in the late 1890s when people finally started, when the fashion was kind of starting to loosen up a little bit, and we didn't have the corsets, and then women and men could both, in at least social settings, start to loosen up and kind of lounge back.
Right.
But for a long time, it was like our clothing literally molded us.
It makes sense, and now we're all in leisure wear. Just slumped over. Nobody knows what to do.
Right, exactly. There was also, in the late 1890s and early 1900s, people were afraid that sending kids to school all day long and making them hunched over in these chairs was causing spinal problems.
Oh my God.
So there was also, along with trying to get kids educated, there was also a movement saying well, yeah, you're educating them, but you're also, you're giving them all these medical problems by making them sit in these chairs for 8 hours a day or 6 hours.
And slumped over. And you know what? They're probably right.
Yeah. Especially at that time. I'm sure it was just those...
With the ink quill and just scratching it out. God.
Another posture that Hughes talks about is the cross-legged. You've tried it already. The cross-legged, they used to call that Indian style, I think, or Turkish style.
Oh.
but it was also called the Taylor fashion, Tailor fashion.
Huh.
And I found several like historical documents that would talk about the people sitting tailor style, and that the reason is that's how tailors, when they were making a pair of clothes or garment, would sit either on a chair or on a table, or sometimes you'll see in old tailor shops from back in the 1800s, they were sitting on these large benches, and they would sit with their legs crossed like that, and they would sew a piece of clothing. They would hold that piece of clothing on their knees and
I
sew it
see.
that way.
Uh-huh.
So it was called Taylor style.
Taylor style. Wow, I like that.
And John, you already mentioned it, like with Japanese sitting. There's the deep kneel, which they do. It's called the seiza. And in the article, Japanese sitting traditions, Del Akala says that there's two distinct sitting postures in traditional Japanese culture. One's the seiza, Seiza, and which is translated as correct sitting. And this is where you have the deep kneel, where you kneel on the floor with the tops of the feet flat against the ground.
Tops
do you know
of
which
the
one?
feet. Yes, I do. My dad could do that position till like right before he died.
Really?
Can you sit like that?
I can.
You can?
Yeah.
I cannot do it.
You have to keep doing it though. Like if you just try to do it like when you go out to eat or something like that, it's going to hurt like hell.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt like hell.
So
and it's usually
do you stretch a lot? You're very limber, it sounds like.
No, I don't. I'm
Can
not
you put
anymore.
a leg behind your neck?
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to try it.
Well, it would expose your genitalia.
Yeah, you realize I'm wearing running shorts right now. That's the reason why I don't want to do it.
Don't pull a Gene Simmons on us.
Ikala says that this posture, the seiza, is associated with formal settings such as tea ceremonies, martial arts, and traditional ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And this type of sitting is a symbol of respect, discipline, and humility, and is practiced to develop a sense of discipline and concentration.
Yeah, makes sense.
The other way is called agura, the other Japanese style of sitting, and that's Agura. And this is a more informal, and that's just the cross-legged, like the lotus position that we were talking about.
Right.
It's more relaxed, informal, and this is more of a casual way of sitting when you're at home.
Okay.
For example.
Okay.
And Ikala says both seiza and agura come with their fair share of discomfort.
Yeah.
Especially for those unaccustomed to these sitting postures.
Yeah.
But the physical discomfort is seen as a form of cultural endurance.
Wow.
So by willingly...
So many cultures are into pain, man.
I know.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah. It says, Ikala says, by willingly embracing discomfort, the Japanese exhibit their commitment to tradition and their ability to endure challenges with resilience.
Wow.
It becomes a shared experience that binds individuals in a cultural context.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
I'm trying to think of how if we would ever, as a culture, if we would ever like, hey, let's all, put it out of the recliner.
Yeah. Let's make it this. Yeah. But it's formality. It's about ritual and formality. I get that. Right. Yeah.
Like you're aware of it. It makes you present.
Formality's important, man. It's important. Yeah. I never thought it was as a kid, but the older I get, oh, okay, you can cut to the chase and you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps. Formality helps.
So the big break, like if you had to like divide people in a really quickly in the types of sitting that they do, you have floor sitters and you have chair sitters in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
babysitters. Okay. Good night.
And in the article, sitting on the floor, is it better than sitting in a chair? Nachiappan Chockalingam says that for thousands of years, humans have rested on the ground using variations of a squat, cross-legged, or a kneeling position. And despite the availability of chairs and things to sit on, sitting on the floor is still common in most cultures.
Huh.
So
I think I could lay on the floor and watch TV if I had one of those corduroy armresty things. You know those things? They're padded. You remember those?
Yeah.
It's like it's the back, and you've got the back and
back
the
of the
arms,
chair.
and that's it.
Yeah.
The back of the chair.
I know what to get.
Where have those gone?
You don't see those.
I haven't seen a brown corduroy backrest thing.
It was like just the back of a chair, like something. Yeah, that's when you're sitting on the floor. Edward Tenner says that although chairs have been with us for millennia, they are neither essential nor especially healthful, even in industrial, post-industrial societies. And he notes that according to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, 410,000 injuries serious enough to disable someone for at least a day occur every year in connection with chairs.
Well, yeah, because we do stupid shit with them. I mean, all you got to do is type in chair fall on YouTube and you see it. Hey, let's put it up here. I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're still figuring them out.
Yeah, we haven't really conquered that technology yet.
The architect Witold Rybczynski, in his book, Now I Sit Me Down, From Klizmos to Plastic Chair, A Natural History.
That is incredible. That title is incredible.
Yeah. This is a great book.
Say it again. Can you say the title again? I'm sorry.
Now I Sit Me Down, From Klizmos to Plastic Chair, A Natural History. By the architect Witold Rybczynski.
This gives me joy, and it makes me feel happy to be a human when I hear things like that.
I know. It's a quick read, easy read, but very full of information. If you listen to this and you want to find out more about, like, hey, yeah, I do want to find out more about chairs.
That's the one you recommend.
This is the one I recommend. Just really quick. Really quick.
It's
great
so
book.
Great.
He's very funny. He's an architect, talks about design, what goes into design a chair.
Cool.
Bauhaus.
Does he get into the Bauhaus movement?
He does. He talks about Mies van der Rohe and all these different Bauhaus people designing chairs. He goes into, like, we'll try to mention at the end here, we'll try to mention off just some quick facts about different chairs.
Okay.
But he says, when you, for one thing, he goes, modern Japanese homes usually have a Western style room with chairs in it. But they also include a separate washitsu, or traditional room, with tatami mats for sitting on the floor.
Okay, so that's like the dining room. Like, for us, it's like a more formal, I get that.
And he says, chairs also affect, if you sit on floor mats, you are likely to develop an etiquette that requires removing footwear before entering the home.
I feel like that's become more common than when I was growing up. Yes. I feel like removing footwear at people's houses is more common than it used to be.
How do you feel about it?
Odd. I always feel weird. I don't want to do it. I get it. I understand it, but I don't want to do it. I don't know what kind of socks I'm wearing.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in my socks. I feel different in my socks.
That's the way I feel about it.
It knocks me down a notch.
Yeah.
And I'm already insecure.
If you have like a hole in your socks, but you tied together.
The worst. And your big toe with its long toenail is sticking out with a toenail fungus or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just the worst.
Somebody's invited you over. And it's always weird, like if it's somebody from work, you're not really that close to them yet. You're friendly, but it's like, hey, it's okay. We take our shoes off in this house.
Or you stupidly wore no socks. Like in LA, you might have sandals on or slip foot. Then you've got to take them off and you're walking around barefoot in some stranger's kitchen and you feel the crumbs and granularness on their kitchen. Or in the bathroom. In the bathroom.
Oh, that's worse. Yeah, you have to go in their bathroom. And
remember in the 70s, they always had those carpets that were fit around the toilet to soak up the urine splash.
Those things. You'd always have to go into like your grandparents' house or something and drag. Once they were gone, you'd have to go in there. You pull that out before you sold the house, and it was horrible.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
The rubber's all gone on the bottom.
Remember they put the shag on top of the toilet too.
Yes, on the toilet seat to match. Yeah,
it was high class.
Mm-hmm.
High class.
It was nice.
Rybczynski says that, sitting on the floor also affects architecture. Walking around the house in bare feet or socks demands smooth floors.
Yeah, it does.
So that's something.
Yeah, it does.
And he also notes that sitting on the floor among chair sitters disrupts the order of things, which is probably why teenagers like to do it.
Oh, those sons of bitches.
And he says also that's a reason why the European avant-garde back in the 1920s used to like to sit on the floor, because it was like kind of culturally we were all supposed to be sitting on the floor. And then
I would have loved being around during that time, man. That seems like a fun time, doesn't it?
Does. Yeah,
the 20s.
That does seem fun to me.
Wow.
A couple of other things that affected how we sit in the 20th century. First of all, there's David Yosefon and Peter Stearns note in their article, The Rise and Fall of American Posture, that after World War I, the spread of radio promoted informal sitting, especially among children who were often depicted listening with their legs over the arm of a chair.
Yes. Or on their belly with their hands on their chin.
Yeah. So it was our entertainment, our radio also affected how we started sitting around the house. Where like all the furniture was all pushed around the radio.
For sure.
And then also it was like if you were listening to, you really weren't looking at everybody else. You know what I mean? It wasn't really important that you face each other.
Right.
Because you were all facing the radio.
It's so interesting.
And also they say that television watching was different from reading, for example, obviously, but also different from listening to the radio. Because television watching, you all had to see the screen.
Yeah, you all face the same direction.
Right.
And everybody shut up. We got to hear this.
And also they say that, because we spend so much time, or people did spend so much time in front of the TV, we had to develop something like the recliner
to be able to put our feet up. To put those kind of hours in. Yeah.
I know. So again, our entertainment. And then of course the computer monitors that we had for about 20 years.
Yeah.
It was all about sitting at, by yourself at the desk in a comfortable gaming chair. For example, they had to design new gaming chairs.
Oh, some of those gaming chairs are good, man.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at Mary has a gaming chair.
What?
Yeah.
How did she get one? Why?
That was the chair she wanted, but it's really not. I'm looking at it right now.
Have you ever sat in it?
No, I haven't. Again, it's like culturally. It's like that's her chair.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be sitting in that chair.
I always love it when people come to a meeting and everybody sits in the same chair, and then the next week they all come and everybody takes the exact same place. I love that.
Because it's, again, I don't know, culturally, you're like, ritual. You don't want to take somebody else's
space. Yeah, I totally, so funny.
Just before we end, I just want to throw out some things. Rybczynski says that Thomas Jefferson, when he came back from his 5-year stint as minister to France, brought back 57 chairs.
Whoa. Prime number. Why 57?
He just loved the chairs he saw in Europe, and
because they were all cushioned and nice. That's so interesting. I wonder what he liked about them.
He was supposed to have something called, which today we called a swivel chair, but at the time they called it Thomas Jefferson's whirligig chair, which allowed him to swivel around.
Well, that's key. A swivel chair is such a great thing, don't you think?
Yeah, and he added two candle holders to each arm, so that when he swiveled, he could still see what he was reading.
Oh, genius. What a weird dude.
He was
You know what I mean? That's one weird dude.
He was a weird dude. We'll have to. Sometime we'll get into the detail, because he's weirder even than what you think he's weird.
Really? Ooh, let's get in.
He's even weird.
Okay, I love that.
George Washington also had a fan chair, FAN chair, which was invented by a guy in Philadelphia, and that where you could sit in it and then use your feet to work a large pasteboard fan to keep yourself fanned. And Rybczynski says that the quintessential American chair is the rocking chair.
Really?
That was the chair that we invented.
Do you own a rocking chair?
I don't have a rocking. my recliner can bounce, but it's not like an actual. Do you have a rocking chair?
I have a rocking chair. It was my mom's. It's one of the few things that I got after she died, and it's broken sitting down in the crawl space under the house.
Oh no!
I got to get that.
What's
thing
broken
out.
about the rockers? The rockers?
Yeah, it can be fixed and it needs to be recaned, and
Yeah.
But I should do it. It's such a nice chair.
So what Rybczynski says is that, historically chairs were like symbols of stability.
Mm-hmm.
And in Europe, it was all about seeming dignified when you were sitting on a chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it was the Americans, the colonials out in the backwoods, that realized, hey, we could put some rails underneath that chair, and then we can just rock back and forth.
Oh, it's so nice.
Yeah. And in the 1700s and 1800s, foreigners who came here used to be like Europeans would be really amused by the fact that Americans just constantly having to rock
until they try it.
Yeah.
You know what I also like that's on the back porches is a glide couch. Glider. Oh, those are great. Those are great.
There's something in South Carolina I came across. It's called a joggling board. Joggling board.
Mm-hmm.
Next time you're in South Carolina, you should ask them, like, hey, I need to go try out a joggling board and see if they know what you're talking about. But it was usually found on a porch, and it looks like a long bench, but it has a really long seat going between two rocking ends.
Ooh.
So you could, but it was bouncy.
Oh.
So you could,
so you bounce and rock?
And the custom was you would people who, I mean, you could do it just for fun, but also if you were courting, you would each start on the other at the end and bounce and get closer and closer.
And you're joggling. Before you know it, you're joggling. Oh, I love that.
Just a couple more. Remember the beanbag chair? Did you ever have a beanbag?
Hell yeah. Hudson has one. I got him one. He likes it. Yeah.
Yeah. 1960s, invented by 3 Italian designers. It was called the Sacco. Sacco.
Nice.
And then Rybczynski says that certain chair designs come to symbolize different or define certain time periods. And he asked a few designers which one they thought would define our time period now, our age now. And the one they all came back with was the monoblock, meaning one piece, monoblock plastic patio chair. Do you know which one? It's the white chair. It's usually white.
Those crappy chairs. That's our chair.
That's our
God.
Yeah,
I hate those chairs. You know why I hate them? Because I can't lean back on the back 2 legs. It's too floppity flop.
That's the problem with it. That was always the challenge when you have an extruded plastic chair, was trying to make those back leg joints so strong. And so there was a German designer named Batzner who stiffened the legs by giving them an L-shaped cross-section. And there was an Italian designer named Magistretti who used an S-shaped in the legs.
Way to go, Magistretti. You know?
But Rybczynski says this is undoubtedly the most common chair on the planet, but the monoblock has not enjoyed the same level of social acceptance of other famous chairs.
Good.
It is more likely to be reviled or at least ignored.
I agree. What about the lawn chair? Nobody's brought up the lawn chair. That should be our chair.
Yeah, the lawn chair was actually, you're talking about the aluminum lawn chair.
Yeah,
right?
with the strips.
Yeah, that one, he actually, the outdoor, this is Rybczynski, outdoor folding chair today is the folding aluminum lawn chair, invented in 1947 by Frederick Arnold, a Brooklyn manufacturer.
Way to go, Frederick. Good idea. And then the lounge chair, what do you call it when it's where you can put your, it's an L version of that where it's longer and your feet.
Oh, yeah, but it's still the same thing. It's like the
Chase? I don't know what it's
Chase
called.
Lounge?
Yeah.
Or Chase Long, like the long chair.
Yeah. That's good. Got a cold bud in your hand. Drop a hit of acid and just sit out in your backyard during tornado season.
We'll see you in a few days, John.
That's my idea of retirement.
All right, John. So wrapping up, Rybczynski quotes Mies van der Rohe. You were talking about balance.
Yeah.
The architect and designer, who said that, quote, "The chair is a very difficult object. Everyone who has ever tried to make one knows that.
Oh, Mies, come on.
And John
really
Dunnigan,
harder than an opera? I mean, let's just get things into,
furniture designer.
Oh, a chair. Okay.
John Dunnigan once wrote, "There is a necessary distinction to be made between trying to design something that is comfortable and trying to design something that is not uncomfortable." So
yes,
that's the challenge when you're designing a chair.
Yeah.
And Rudchimsky says that defining comfort is like trying to prove a negative because it is often discomfort that is more immediately experienced when sitting in a poorly designed chair.
Boy, ain't that the truth.
It is, isn't it? I mean, because you know immediately, like, there's something wrong with this chair, even more so than when you find a chair that you're like, this is perfect.
We have a leather wing back chair, 2 of them. Oh, love those chairs.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it was just something to keep in mind when you finally find that perfect chair that fits you, that you love. Just think of all of the work that went into design that thing, just to fit you perfectly and keep your ass happy. You know what I mean?
Goddamn right. That's why I love that book. It's like, don't forget about the chair.
The chair. All right, John. Well, I hope you have a new appreciation of sitting and everything that goes in for
I sure
sitting.
do. This is a seated human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for indulging me as I got rid of this obsession that I've had for about a year and a half.
This is great. I'm submitting it to this year's Webbies.
To find out about the chair. Hopefully we get seated up close. I hope.
Yeah. Well, we'll be on
All
the
right,
back.
everybody. Thanks for listening. If you get a chance, please check us out on Facebook and on our Instagram. We have more information. I'll put up some chair designs there. And also be sure to check out Watson & Company socks. And also Puppies Not Piranhas for some great friendship bracelets.
Oh, mine's on my microphone stand this week. It's right here.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We love you. Now get up and go do something.
Yeah.
So,
and
we
then
love
come
you guys.
home and rest.